Pleasure. I just wanted to talk to you about first. I did want to say that once I hit 50 subscribers on my other channel, Billionaire Lives Matter 2, anything sports related, any sports content will be on that channel. With this channel, it's all over the place, isn't it? And I'm fine with that, but I don't think people they get confused and they might go to the channel because they want to see one form of content and then there's something else and they're just not interested in everything. So everything sports for now. Some of the sport, like the live broadcasts, are going to be on this main channel, but hopefully it'll get changed over to Billionaire Lives Matter soon. That way, there's no confusion. But I wanted to talk to you about the contract, the NBA contracts. NBC is bidding for the National Basketball Association, the NBA, which they had in the 90s. Marv Albert was, the lead guy, along with Mike Fratello. They did amazing. I think Doug Collins was in there for a stint, Matt Gukas, but who we really remember were Fratello and Albert, and they did a great job. And Bob Costas was in the studio, and NBC did a great job. And you remember that theme music by John Tesh that everyone remembers. So I don't know why that's so iconic. I think it's okay, but now that music is actually Fox's college basketball uses that music. So as far as this move, it's very concerning to me. TNT has been doing the NBA since 1989, and they've become great at it. That's not always the case. We look at ESPN. ESPN's coverage of sports has waned over the years. They don't do a great job. They do a very poor job. But TNT has really mastered broadcasting of basketball, and they talk about inside the NBA with Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, Ernie Johnson, and people are worried about losing that. Absolutely, but that they can move over to NBC. Those three, that's Barkley. Barkley can move over to NBC. Shaquille O'Neal and what's his name, Kenny the Jet Smith. They can all move over there without problems. But what I'm worried about is Kevin Harlan, Iron Eagle. These guys do an incredible job, and those two are with CBS. So I know there's more flexibility for play-by-play guys to move between networks, but I don't think really so much so with the major networks. Is NBC going to allow Iron Eagle and Kevin Harlan to broadcast games for them, but also broadcast NFL games for CBS? You see what I'm saying? I just hope that TNT can maintain some sort of coverage, because I don't like where this is going. NBC had hockey for a long time. Hockey just was like, you didn't, after that lockout in the early 2000s, you just didn't see hockey for the longest time, and it was on NBC, and people barely knew it. It was on Versus. Can you believe that? Hockey, the NHL was on Versus for a time. And I think this is a really big deal. And TNT does an incredible job with the NBA. They've been doing it since 1989, and the NBC and NBC did a great job in the 90s. But it was in the 90s. Marv Albert's retired now. Things are different, and my hope is that TNT maintains coverage of the NBA, not just for Barkley and O'Neal and Kenny Smith and Ernie Johnson, who I know could easily move over to NBC without a hitch. It's the play-by-play guys. I think Brian Anderson, he is with CBS. So, they're just a bunch of guys that have contracts with CBS. I think Brian Anderson could potentially get out of it because he does college basketball for CBS. but it's a major concern. Do we really want to lose Kevin Harlan? Do we really want to lose Ian Eagle? I don't think people really think about how important it is to have a good broadcast. When you compare ESPN to TNT, and ESPN does a halfway decent job, but it is nowhere in the league of what TNT does. And you can see the difference. You can see that it's so important, the broadcast, who the commentators are, who the director is. People don't think about this. Just how the game is presented to the public is so important. It's is equally important to the players and coaches. It really is. That's how we're able. That's our window into viewing the game from home is by these networks broadcasting. And if you have an announcer that's not as good as another one, it affects the broadcast of the game, and it's going to affect the product. And I hope the NBA realizes this, that you are affecting your product by just handing it over to the highest bidder. So be careful what you're doing here. This could cause a lot of problems, with certain announcers over there at CBS. What Fox did, what networks have done in the past, is they just bring in their own announcers, and it takes the public a long time to warm up to these people, and they're not always great. And look at ESPN. You can't even remember who these guys are. It's constantly shifting. It's different people. They had Mark Jackson and what's his name, the former Knicks coach. They're with Mike Breen forever. I've never been a fan of Mike Breen, and I didn't like Mark Jackson, and I didn't like the former Knicks Jeff Van Gundy. I think the other Van Gundy is a lot better, but they finally let them loose after years and years. And I don't even think Breen is that great. He gets into the game, but he's just not. ESPN just does a very, very poor job. So is that going to be the case with NBC? It affects the product. Believe me, when you're watching an NBA game, ESPN, for the longest time, the game would end, they wouldn't do a post-game interview. They would go directly to Sports Center. So it just takes away of the feeling of it being an important event. ESPN does a horrible job. So if anything, I wish that NBC could take over the broadcast rights from ESPN. Get ESPN out of the way. Teach them a lesson. That they really need to improve. You're the all sports network 24 hours a day, and you do such a horrible job of covering the NBA. I would love to see ESPN lose it. Really teach them a lesson. Make them have to sort of regather themselves and really think about what they're doing. But it could very well be that TNT, which has done such an amazing job for almost my entire life, like my entire lifetime watching the NBA. I've really been watching the NBA closely since 1989 as a 9-year-old, maybe 88. I think TBS was, it was on TBS, the playoffs, and then TNT began in '89, and then it's been of course also a Turner network, and it's been an incredible relationship since then, and they just kept getting better and better. And if you're worried about Barkley, O'Neal, and Kenny the Jet Smith, if you like inside the NBA, they can move over to NBC. But don't forget the fact that it's also the directors. It's the whole team that they have there. It's not just those three. You'll notice if they bring those three over, or four, if they bring Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, Shaquille, and Barkley over to NBC, and they don't bring any of the directors or any of the other people involved in that show, the show won't be as good. I guarantee you. We'll see what happens. Those are my 2 cents. I would give a word to the wise with the NBA. Just be cognizant of, I know you want to make more money, but your product, don't let your product suffer because you want to make a few more $1 million or however many, whatever the difference is, because it's going to affect your ability to profit in the long run if you're putting a subpar product out there, which is very possible if you move to NBC. As I was saying, the announcers, you could lose Kevin Harlan. You could lose Iron Eagle. Who knows? I know Gus Johnson was doing some games. Who knows? It could be some random play-by-play guys. We've seen what a poor job ESPN does. Don't make that mistake by moving it to NBC. If you do move it to NBC, cut ESPN out of the picture and keep TNT. That would be my highly, highly recommended advice. Thank you so much for being with us. Please subscribe. Please subscribe to the other channel. Billionaire Lives Matter 2 is where we're going to find the majority of the sports content going forward. Have a great night. My name's Augie Johnston. Thank you so much for everyone that's watched. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to know your opinion. Please put in the comments what you think. Thank you so much.